I only came for water.
This well is not for your kind. Move away from here.
I am thirsty, same as everyone else.
Your mother brought a curse on this land when she gave birth to you. Do not make this worse for yourself.
My mother is dead, and I am still here.
Go back to the bush where you belong. Nobody here wants to drink from the same well as a weak child.
One day you will need me, and I will still come.
The day Blessing was born, the rain refused to fall. That was what they said. That was what the village of Omona remembered. Not her first cry, not her mother's exhausted relief, not the midnight stillness that had held the air like a held breath. What they remembered was the dry sky. What they chose to remember was the birthmark. It covered the entire left side of her face, from the edge of her hairline down to the curve of her jaw. Dark, wide, permanent, and in the eyes of Omona, it was not a birthmark at all. It was a signature. Something had marked this child before she arrived. Something had claimed her. And whatever that something was, the village of Omona wanted no part of it. Her mother, Adana, was a quiet woman who came to Omona as a bride from a village 3 rivers away. She had no sisters here, no aunties to stand beside her. When the women saw the child's face in the lamplight and stepped back one by one, Adana pulled Blessing to her chest and said nothing. She had learnt already that words cost more than she could spend in this place. For 5 years, Adana protected Blessing the only way she knew. How? With her own body. She walked with her to the stream. She stood between her daughter and the pointing fingers. She taught Blessing to read the land the way her own mother had taught her. Which roots held water, which leaves carried medicine, which paths through the bush led somewhere, and which ones folded back on themselves and left you more lost than when you started. Then Adana got sick. It was the kind of sickness that came quietly and left loudly. Fever first, then the cough, then the weight falling off her frame like shed cloth until she was something thin and small in the bed where she had once been warm and whole. The village women sent no one to help. The elder's wife passed the compound door twice without knocking. Blessing boiled water and pressed cool leaves against her mother's head and prayed in the only language a 5-year-old knows, which is not words at all, but presence. Just presence. Staying there, refusing to leave. Adana died on a Tuesday morning when the sun was barely up. Blessing was 6 years old. No family came, no elder arranged anything. It was the village carpenter, a quiet man named Brother Fidelis, who had never been unkind to Adana, who dug the grave and said a short prayer over it. Blessing stood beside him in a wrapper 2 sizes too large and watched her mother go into the ground. She did not cry. Not because she was not broken, but because something in her already understood. Tears in Umuna were a private thing. You did not give this village your grief. You kept it. After that, Blessing lived at the edge of Umuna, in the small compound her mother had kept. The roof leaked, the walls cracked in Hamatan. She patched what she could with mud and dry grass, and learned to sleep through the sound of wind finding holes. She survived on what she grew, what she gathered, and occasionally what Brother Fidelis left quietly outside her gate, a bunch of plantain, a cup of gari, never with ceremony, never asking anything back. The village children were not quiet about their cruelty. They had learnt it cleanly from their parents and wore it without shame. They called her witch face. They called her bush girl. They crossed to the other side of the road when she walked to the market. Once, a group of boys threw red laterite mud at her back and ran laughing before she could turn around. She wiped it off with the edge of her wrapper and kept walking. She had learned that stopping gave them more than they deserved. The elders managed her existence the way you manage something you cannot get rid of, but do not want to look at directly. Papa Ese, the head elder, had declared at her birth that she carried a mark of the other world and that the village was not responsible for whatever misfortune followed. He had said it publicly. He had said it with the kind of authority that settles into stone. And Umunna had taken that declaration and built a wall with it. She was not invited to celebrations. She was not permitted to fetch water when the other women were at the well. She ate alone, moved alone, existed in the spaces the village left empty without meaning to. The far edge of the market, the path behind the school, the quiet bank of the small river where nobody went because the reeds grew too thick and the ground stayed soft even in dry season. That soft ground was where Adana had once showed her something. Blessing was 4 years old then, small enough to sit on her mother's lap in the reeds, while Adana patted the grass with both hands and showed her the dark, wet earth beneath. She had pressed Blessing's small palm flat against it and said, "Feel that. The ground keeps water even when the sky forgets. Remember this place. Remember exactly where we are sitting right now." Blessing had remembered. She had remembered the way children remember the things adults think they are too young to carry, completely, permanently, in the body as much as the mind. The drought came in the dry season of Blessing's 14th year. It did not announce itself dramatically. Droughts rarely do. It arrived the way bad things often arrive in villages, quietly, dressed as something ordinary. The harmattan was simply longer than usual. The wells simply dropped a little lower. The river thinned to a muddy thread. The compound gardens yellowed and curled. The livestock grew thin and restless. Women began waking before sunrise to be first at the well, and what they pulled up was less each morning and murkier than the morning before. By the 6th week, the chief's well, the deepest in all of Umana, had slowed to a trickle. Papa Eze called a meeting of all the elders under the okwa tree at the center of the village. They sat in a circle and spoke in low, serious tones, and sent for the village herbalist, who came and threw his tools and stared at the sky and said the land was grieving and that sacrifices must be made. The sacrifices were made. The sky did not respond. They sent word to the government. The government sent a letter. The letter said, "Help was coming. Help did not come." Children began crying from thirst in the afternoons. The elderly moved slowly, lips cracked, eyes dull. 2 families from the outer compounds packed what they could carry and left for the city without saying goodbye. The ones who stayed watched them go with a fear they did not name out loud. Umunna was dying of thirst. Papa Eze called another meeting. This time, the voices were not low. They were sharp and frightened and pointing in every direction. They argued about the river. They argued about rain harvesting. They argued about who had failed and who should have done more and who was responsible for the state of the chief's well. They argued until the sun moved across the sky and the meeting dissolved into exhaustion, and nobody had any answer at all. Blessing watched from a distance. She had watched everything from a distance for 14 years. She had learned to read Umunna like you read weather, from far enough away to see the whole shape of it. And what she saw now was a village that had run out of road and did not know it yet. She thought about the soft ground by the river. She thought about her mother's hand pressing hers flat against the dark, wet earth. She thought about what Adana had said. The ground keeps water even when the sky forgets. That night, alone in her cracked compound, Blessing made a decision. She rose before the sun and walked the long way around the village, keeping to the paths behind the compound where nobody would see her. She carried her mother's old iron rod and a calabash and moved through the thick reeds to a place she had not visited in years, but had never stopped knowing. She found it exactly where Adana had shown her. The ground was still soft, even now in the worst dry season anyone in Umuna could remember. The earth here held its dark, cool dampness. She pressed her palm flat against it, the way her mother had taught her, and felt the faint give beneath. Water, close, patient, waiting. She drove the rod into the ground, then again, then again. On the fourth strike, something shifted beneath her feet, a hollow sound, a slight give, and then slowly, water began seeping up around the road. Dark at first, then clearing. She pressed her hands into the soft earth and widened the opening carefully, the way Adana had shown her with words and with hands that knew what they were doing. Within an hour, clean water was rising steadily from the ground, pooling in the hollow she had made, cool and quiet and real. Blessing sat back on her heels and looked at it for a long time. Then she stood up and walked back into Umuna. She went to Brother Fidelis first. He was the only one who had ever been consistently kind, and she was not foolish enough to walk into the center of a frightened village alone with news they might not believe. Brother Fidelis listened to her without interrupting. He looked at her face, the birthmark that had defined her entire life in this place. And then he looked at her eyes, which were steady and clear, and carrying no performance at all. He picked up his tools and followed her without a word. When he saw the water rising from the ground, he covered his mouth with one hand and stood very still. Then he turned to Blessing and said, "How did you know this was here?" "My mother showed me," she said, "before she died." He was quiet again for a moment. Then he said, "We need to tell Papa Eze." Blessing did not move immediately. The name sat between them like something with weight. Papa Eze, who had declared her a child of the other world. Papa Eze, who had given Umona commission to turn it back on her for 14 years. Brother Fidelis watched her face. He did not push. He waited. Finally, Blessing said, "Tell him, tell all of them, but tell them the water is here. Don't tell them it was me. Not yet." Brother Fidelis shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "they will know, and they should know." Papa Eze came with 6 elders and the chief's representative and 3 of the women who had been the loudest at the well the morning they sent Blessing away without water. They came with skepticism of people who had already been disappointed by herbalists and government letters and their own prayers. They came prepared to find nothing. They found clean water rising steadily from the earth. The silence that followed was the kind that has texture. You could feel it pressing. Papa Eze looked at the water. He looked at Blessing standing at the edge of the clearing, arms at her sides, face open. The birthmark that he had once declared a curse catching the early morning light. He looked at Brother Fidelis, who stood beside her and whose expression said everything his silence did not. Mama Chioma, the wide woman, who had been taking Blessing's bucket at the well, was the first to speak. Her voice had lost all its old certainty. She said, "How long has this been here?" Blessing said, "My mother found it 10 years ago. She showed me before she died." "The woman who crossed the road when she saw you coming," Mama Chioma said, slowly, as though thinking it through out loud. "She showed you this?" "Yes," Blessing said. Another silence. Then Papa Eze did something nobody in Omuna had ever seen him do. He lowered himself slowly to one knee on the soft earth, an old man, creaking, deliberate, and he bowed his head toward Blessing, and he stayed there. The elders followed, one by one. Then the chief's representative, then Mama Chioma, who was crying now without seeming to know it. Blessing watched them. Her face was still. She did not rush them. She did not step back from the weight of the moment or deflect it with false humility. She received it fully, not with coldness, not with triumph, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had always known their worth and had simply been waiting for the world to catch up. She let them stay on their knees long enough for it to mean something. Then she said, "Get up. We have work to do. This water is enough for the whole village if we build it properly, and I know how." They built the well in 4 days. Blessing directed every part of it. Brother Fidelis walked beside her. Slowly, one by one, others joined. First the younger men who had nothing to lose by listening to her, then the older ones who had more to lose by not. The women brought food to the workers without being asked. Children who once threw mud at her back now stood at the edge of the work and watched with wide open eyes. On the 4th evening, when the well was complete and clean water flowed freely and the whole village gathered around it, Papa Eze stood before Muna and spoke. He said that he was wrong. He said it clearly, without decoration. He said the mark on Blessing's face was not a curse, had never been a curse, and that the only curse Omuna had ever carried was the one they had placed on themselves the day they chose fear over truth. He said the debt they owed this child could not be paid in a single day, but that they would spend the rest of their lives trying. Blessing stood beside the well and listened to all of it. When he finished, she did not say that it was fine. It was not entirely fine, and she was not going to pretend otherwise. But she said this: "My mother loved this village even when it did not love her back. She showed me this spring because she wanted Omona to survive, not because it deserved to, because that is what love does. It serves even the undeserving. I am my mother's daughter, and I will do the same." There was not a dry eye in Omona that evening. The sun went down over a village that had water again, and something more than water. It had the uncomfortable, necessary, life-giving gift of having been shown exactly who it was, and exactly what it had thrown away, and exactly how much grace it had received from the one person it gave none to. In the years that followed, Blessing did not leave Omona. Some expected her to, some might have understood if she had, but she stayed and she built. A small school first, then a proper compound, then a garden that became a teaching space where she showed young girls what Adana had shown her: how to read the land, how to find what is hidden, how to survive with knowledge when the world offers you nothing else. The children of Omona grew up knowing her name with reverence. The women who had once turned their backs on her became the loudest voices defending her. Papa Eze, in his final years, visited her compound every market day without fail and sat with her in the shade of the mango tree her mother had planted and spoke about everything and nothing, the way old people and young people can when enough truth has passed between them to make pretense unnecessary. And on the wall inside Blessing's compound, written in her own hand on a piece of flat white stone, were the words Adana had once pressed into her palm along with the feel of dark, wet earth. The ground keeps water, even when the sky forgets. Remember where you are sitting. Remember exactly. Before you go, tell us in the comments, was Blessing wrong to stay and help the village that rejected her? Or was staying the greatest power move of all? If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.